Hey everybody, this is Matt Atkinson, and you're watching Forward Gettysburg with Aaron Smith.
What is going on, everybody? Aaron Smith here for Forward Gettysburg. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Super excited to be here. It's a gorgeous day at the Gettysburg National Military Park. The thermometer is above 50 degrees. There's a slight breeze in the air. The sun is trying to peek out. Hey, for January, I'm gonna take it. I'm coming to you guys today from the Wheatfield. Just over my shoulder there is the area known as Stony Ridge. If you guys ride around the battlefield, tour the battlefield, you'll know that as where the loop is. And if you know anything about the loop, you know the most prominent monument in that area is the Irish Brigade, and that is our topic for today's video. So thank you all so much for joining me. Please, as always, if you're enjoying the videos, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your support. Let's get into it. The situation in the Wheatfield, the afternoon, early evening hours of July 2nd. The situation for the Union Army is dire. Of course, we know Daniel Sickles, he has moved his 3rd Corps forward nearly 3/4 of a mile away from that left flank of the Union 2nd Corps, and the Confederates are now hammering him for it. He has made a terrible decision, but if you would ask Dan Sickles, he would tell you he was the hero of Gettysburg. That's neither here nor there, but I just, I gotta say a little something about Sickles, The Confederates are hammering them. Longstreet has launched that attack from the south up the Emmitsburg Road, and they are getting hammered. De Trobriand's brigade, originally here from Sickles' 3rd Corps, they are getting absolutely smashed. They are putting a valiant defense up. Of course, we have the 17th Maine at that stone wall at the south end of the Wheatfield, just down that way. And then, of course, we have the north end of the Wheatfield up here. Further up that way is going to be the Peach Orchard and Sickles salient, just to orient you guys a little bit. They're putting up a valiant stand, but they are quickly becoming outnumbered. So the 5th Corps Division, Barnes's division, they're going to come here. The 2 brigades of Tilton and Schweitzer, they're going to come to reinforce, and then boom, we have Kershaw's South Carolina Brigade attacking them and smashing Schweitzer. So the situation is dire. They are going to send for reinforcements. 2 elements of 2 Union Corps have already been engaged here in this area, and this is overall a fairly small area, only a few acres large. George Gordon Meade is going to send the 2nd Corps Division of Caldwell, consisting of Kelly, Cross, Zook, and Brooke. If you ever need to remember the Union order of battle, I just think that's a cool little listed off Kelly, Cross, Zook, Brooke. Just a nice little rhyme there. Those 4 brigades of that 2nd Corps Division, they are going to be sent over here to reinforce. And that's not a very large division of men, mind you. It's about 3,300 men coming to this area to reinforce. And of course, one of those brigades is going to be the Irish Brigade under Patrick Kelly. The Irish Brigade is going to consist of the 28th Massachusetts, the 63rd, 69th, and 88th New York, and the 116th Pennsylvania. A brigade strength of about 532 men, a very small brigade in the large scope of things. If we look at some of the Confederate regiments, the 26th North Carolina came into Gettysburg with 850 men. So we have a brigade of men that is almost half the size of one Confederate regiment. However, the Irish Brigade, they have gained a reputation in the Army of the Potomac as fierce fighters. Despite their status as immigrants to America, they are earning their keep, and they are absolutely wrecking the enemy on every single battlefield they step foot on. Now, why was this area, the Wheatfield of Gettysburg, so important? You guys can look around here. There's not a whole lot of elevation. There's nothing that really sticks out as a very fortifiable position. This isn't a hill that overlooks the entire battlefield. This is a outside of the context of the Battle of Gettysburg, this is a rather underwhelming place to be. This looks like every single other wheat field or farm field in central Pennsylvania. So what makes the wheat field at Gettysburg so important? Well, like I oriented you earlier in this episode, just a few moments ago, just off in that direction to the west is Sickles' line along the Emmitsburg Road. The Confederates are attacking from the south. They are coming up this way. And if they take this position, well, they now have easy access to the rear of Sickles along the Emmitsburg Road, and they could absolutely crush that position and wreak all sorts of havoc there along the Emmitsburg Road and just continue to roll up that line up along Cemetery Ridge. So a little bit about the history and formation of the Irish Brigade. Originally, it was only 3 regiments: the 66th, the 69th, and the 88th New York. And originally the United States government was hesitant to create these ethnically based brigades. They liked the idea of union, and they felt an ethnically based brigade would work against that idea of union. However, Secretary of War Simon Cameron is going to approve the mustering of an all-Irish brigade, a majority Irish brigade. And that's going to serve 2 purposes. First of all, it's going to kind of put Britain, it's kind of going to give Britain a warning. It's going to say, hey, we have a lot of these Irish revolutionaries here. If you guys intervene in our Civil War, you might have problem with the Irish revolutionaries over there in your neck of the woods. A lot of the leadership of the Irish Brigade, they are going to be these Irish revolutionaries. There was an uprising in 1848 in Ireland. So a lot of these guys are going to come over here. They're going to immigrate to America, and they're going to join the ranks of the Union Army. The second thing that it does is that it is going to bolster support from the Irish immigrant community, an important community in the North. There was a high number of Irish immigrants to America, of course, during the 19th century. There were about 100,000 immigrants from Ireland in New York by the time of the Civil War. An interesting fact is that the city with the second highest number of Irish immigrants is going to be New Orleans. So you can see that both sides, they are going to field Irish brigades. The Louisiana Tigers, the famed Tigers that are going to do some fighting over there on Cemetery Hill, on East Cemetery Hill, that it also could be considered an Irish brigade. So we're going to have our 63rd, our 69th, the fighting 69th, and the 88th New York. Those 3 regiments, they're going to be joined by the 29th Massachusetts. However, the 29th Massachusetts is going to be what they referred to as a majority Yankee regiment. And after the Battle of Antietam, the 29th is going to be detached from the Irish Brigade, and the 28th Massachusetts is going to join them. Shortly after that, the 116th Pennsylvania from Philadelphia, they are going to join the Irish Brigade. So now we have this large majority ethnic Irish brigade that are going to make their way here to Gettysburg. And at the beginning of the war, the Irish Brigade is going to have about 3,000 men. By the time they get to Gettysburg, their ranks would have been so depleted that they're only going to have about 532. They're going to see an incredible amount of action at the Sunken Road in Antietam. And of course, we all know the tragic tale of them charging the breastworks at Fredericksburg, that nearly hopeless charge. So these men, they have put in some work for the Army of the Potomac. Many members of the regiment were devout Catholics and devout Protestants. If you know anything about Irish history, you know there's this rivalry. There are wars fought between the Catholics and the Protestants. However, these men here at Gettysburg are going to be united against one common enemy in the Confederacy. As Caldwell's division gets its orders to move toward the Wheatfield to reinforce that falling sector of the field, Father William Corby, chaplain for the Irish Brigade, is going to offer up a prayer of absolution. Father Corby would later write, "The prayer was intended for all, in quantum possum, not only for our brigade, but for all, north and south, who were about to appear before their maker." Colonel St. Clair Mulholland of the 116th Pennsylvania would later go on to describe this prayer. Father Corby up on this rock, his monument right behind me. Fun fact about the monument, it was the first monument of a non-combatant here at Gettysburg. It was put up in 1910. Father Corby's going to get upon this rock here, this boulder as legend goes, and he's going to offer up this prayer of absolution. And Colonel St. Clair Mulholland is going to say the following: "The brigade was standing at order arms, and as he closed his address, every man fell on his knees with head bowed down. Father Corby pronounced the words of absolution. The scene was more than impressive, it was awe-inspiring. Over to the left, out by the Peach Orchard and Little Round Top, the roar of the battle rose and swelled and re-echoed through the woods. I do not think there was a man in the brigade who did not offer up a heartfelt prayer. For some, it was their last." And as Father Corby's prayer finishes up, the men will finally get the order to make their way toward the Wheatfield. Now the Confederate positions here, we have Tige Anderson's Georgian Brigade attacking in the south of the Wheatfield there at the wall, at that stone wall where the 17th Maine was. So they're attacking there. Kershaw's brigade is attacking from the area of Stony Hill, which is that area I showed you a little bit earlier. So there is a lot of pressure in this position. So here we have Caldwell's 2nd Corps Division of 3,300 men making their way to the Wheatfield. And first, Cross's brigade is going to strike Tige Anderson's Georgians there in the woods, and they're going to start to push them back into the Rose Woods. And then we have Zook's brigade that is going to take positions at that Stony Hill area and start to attack Kershaw's South Carolinians. And then finally, we have the Irish Brigade. Green flags unfurled in the wind. Fog a bala, clear the way. Here comes the Irish Brigade. And the Irish Brigade, they're going to fill in the gap between the south there and the northwest where Zook is. But they're going to, as they make their way, they're going to start to angle themselves toward that Stony Hill area. Now, the interesting thing about the Irish Brigade is that many of them were armed with Model 1842 smooth-bore muskets. And the projectiles that these muskets were fired was known as buck and ball. Very, very similar to a modern day buckshot loading, if you will. You would have your lead ball, your main projectile, almost to the equivalent of a shotgun slug. And then you would have much smaller pellets loaded around that slug there. In the Civil War, we had rifle technology, so you can imagine that these buck and ball smoothbore muskets were incredibly outdated by the time of the Civil War, especially by the time of the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. The Irish Brigade, what they lacked in perhaps long-distance firing, they more than made up for in close distance encounters. And when they reach that area of Stony Hill, that's what they're going to have, a close distance encounter with the men of Kershaw's South Carolina Brigade of the Confederacy. The Irish Brigade, they're eventually going to end up here in the area of Stony Hill, and they're going to be supporting Zook's brigade as well. Now, by moving here to the Stony Hill with Cross's brigade in the south end of the Wheatfield, they've now opened up a gap. So Caldwell is going to send his final brigade in, the brigade of Brooke. And Brooke is going to sweep the Wheatfield and fill in that gap. And Brooks's brigade is actually going to begin to charge forward and take out those elements there right between the left of Tige Anderson's Georgians and the right of Kershaw's South Carolinians. And the other men of Caldwell's division are going to be very inspired by that. And they themselves are going to begin to charge forward and drive the Confederates out of this area. Zook and Kelly, they're going to drive the South Carolinians from Stony Hill. And Cross's brigade, they're at the south end near that Stonewall, they're going to continue to drive out Tige Anderson's Georgians. So the Union Army now again has control of the Wheatfield. Kershaw and Anderson's brigade, Anderson wounded, so the brigade is now under the command of Lieutenant Colonel William Luffman. They're going to order a withdrawal, and Brooke is going to continue his charge forward over in this area until he meets the brigade that was kind of resting in reserve, kind of off to the rear of and in between Kershaw and Anderson's Georgians, and that's going to be the Georgia Brigade of Semmes. So they're going to be checked by Semmes, and they're going to, they're going to exchange some fire there, but there's not going to be any more of a charge forward. That charge forward is going to stop. So there's still going to be some resistance from Kershaw in this area. There's going to be some fighting. The Irish Brigade, they are once again going to prove their worth as soldiers here on the fields at Gettysburg. And they're going to be in these trees. They're going to be firing upon those South Carolinians with that terrible, terrible buck and ball, which at close range is it's like getting hit by a shotgun slug and buckshot all at once. So it's going to be devastating to these Confederate men. At this point in the fighting, Caldwell's division has reinforced this area and taken control of the Wheatfield and the surrounding woods. They're going to be posted to the west, to the north, and to the south in the Wheatfield. However, the rebels, they are reorganizing for another assault. This time, however, they're going to have the added support of Wofford's Georgian Brigade. Just to the west here and a little bit to the north, Barksdale, William Barksdale is making his grand assault upon Sickles' salient, and he is starting to roll up Sickles' line along the Emmitsburg Road. And Wofford, if you remember Longstreet's attack on day 2, it's going to kind of go in echelon. It's, we have the action down at Devil's Den and Little Round Top first, the action at the Wheatfield, and now we're starting to get up into the Peach Orchard. And at this part of the field here, this southern part of the field, the en echelon attack is happening 2 brigades deep. So Wofford is going to be attacking in support of Barksdale, but Wofford's brigade is going to attack a little bit further to the south than Barksdale's brigade. So now we have Wofford's Georgians closing in on Zook's right flank. Not only that, but we have Kershaw's South Carolinians. They have regrouped and they are attacking as well. We have Tige Anderson's Georgians. They have regrouped and they're going to continue their attack. And then finally, we have Semmes's Georgians who also have regrouped and they are joining in this attack to retake the Wheatfield. Brooke is going to be too far in advance and he soon realizes he's going to be engulfed by the oncoming Confederates. So Caldwell is going to send for Schweitzer's brigade, which had retreated back to an area just north of the Wheatfield. However, we start to get into this breakdown of communication. We start to get into this whole thing with the Union Army. Schweitzer's in an entirely different corps. If you remember, Schweitzer is under Barnes' division of the 5th Corps. So Schweitzer is not going to take orders from Caldwell, who is in the 2nd Corps. So they're going to send off for Divisional Commander Barnes to gain permission to do it the proper way, to go through the proper channels to reinforce this area. And finally, Schweitzer is going to get the go-ahead. He's going to receive what they describe as a proper order to come and reinforce this area. So Schweitzer is going to come into the Wheatfield fighting now. And Schweitzer's brigade is going to come into this Wheatfield fighting for the 2nd time that day. Meanwhile, like I said earlier, we have Barksdale's Mississippians. We have Wofford's Georgians. They are attacking to the north and they are starting to collapse that Union line there that lines the Emmitsburg Road. They are starting to absolutely roll them up and send them into retreat. Now Wofford's right flank is going to end up right here on the flank of Zook, on his right flank. And not only that, but we have Kershaw's South Carolinians to the front. We have Semmes's Georgians down this way, and we have Luffman or Anderson, his Georgians as well over there in the Rose Woods. So now this situation, like I described earlier, this position is starting to become engulfed and it's starting to become very, very untenable for these men. Realizing that they have Confederate troops on their flank and in their front, and they are quickly becoming surrounded. Zook and Kelly are going to order a withdrawal, and the men are going to start falling back from this position. Meanwhile, Schweitzer's men, they have taken up a defensive position along that stone wall where the 17th Maine had made their stand earlier in the day. As Schweitzer's men hold that stone wall to the south of the Wheatfield, they're going to give Kelly and Zook enough time to fall back. As the Confederate attack continues, the day will be over for the Irish Brigade. Behind me is the beautiful, beautiful monument to the Irish Brigade here at Gettysburg on the Loop, also known historically as Stony Hill, where the Irish Brigade made their stand here at Gettysburg. Of the 3,300 men in Caldwell's division, 1,300 will become casualties. Of the 532 men in the Irish Brigade at Gettysburg, 198 of them will be casualties. Nearly a third of the entire brigade. That's going to include 27 killed, 109 wounded, and 62 captured or missing. For the entirety of the Civil War in the grand picture of Union brigades, only the Iron Brigade will suffer more overall casualties for the entire war than the Irish Brigade. No doubt these men, immigrants to America, majority Irish regiments. No doubt these men proved their bravery here at Gettysburg, proved their bravery at Fredericksburg, Antietam, Chancellorsville, every single battle they were in from 1861 to 1865. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. As always, my name is Aaron Smith for Forward Gettysburg, and I will catch you on the next one.